Hello, everyone. I hope this message finds you and your families healthy and safe. Now, the current pandemic has tested all of us, but at Coastal GasLink, we've not wavered from the commitment we've made to you. We've remained steadfast in our commitment to create an extraordinary legacy of safety and respect for all people, communities, and the environment. The way we work may change, but our focus on safely delivering this vital project for the long-term prosperity of the North, BC, and Canada is unshaken, because together we will emerge from this stronger than before. This is our legacy in action.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to be joining today from Prince George on the traditional territory of the Cailey today. My name is Giddens, Public Affairs Manager for Coastal GasLink. And we're proud to be sponsoring the 2021 Creating Energy Conference in its second year. There are several from my team joining today alongside our industry partners virtually, and the piece as we look to engage and collaborate with communities, government, and businesses. The availability of significant high-quality natural gas resources in BC and Alberta can enable Canada to be a reliable and competitive supplier to global markets. And Coastal GasLink, of course, is energy's most significant investment in BC, and we continue to advance investments in projects that support reducing global GHG emissions. And our role is to deliver the responsibly produced energy from right in your backyard in the piece. I've had the privilege of working on this project for over 8 years now, and the most rewarding part has been the relationships built with communities. And the Chamber Network has been an invaluable partner for us along the way. I've appreciated the value of Chambers provide so much that I actually joined the Prince George Chamber Board, and I've just started my second term as president. And I'm going to introduce my friend Susannah Pierce shortly here, but before I do, I just want to provide a brief update on Coastal GasLink. We've now been in construction for 2.5 years. Our 670-kilometer pipeline will safely deliver natural gas from the Groundbirch area to the LNG Canada facility, where they will prepare it for global export. The scale of these projects are absolutely incredible. For our project, building a 48-inch diameter pipeline across British Columbia is no easy feat. Over 2 mountain ranges and 600 water crossings, all while achieving the highest standards in environmental protection. We're doing this because of the opportunity it will bring and is bringing to Indigenous and local communities, to our province and to Canada. Coastal GasLink will transport BC's cleaner natural gas and provides this unique opportunity that we heard about this morning for the province to help replace higher carbon emitting fuels such as coal. Again, Brian mentioned this morning that the GHG emissions from LNG Canada's Kitimat operation will be lower than any facility currently operating anywhere in the world today. That's something to be proud of. In a few moments, we're going to hear more about this LNG opportunity and the resulting economic impacts to our province. And as we approach the summer season, Coastal GasLink is excited to begin full construction remobilization, which is underway now. We had a challenging start to the year as one of the 5 projects in the Northern Health region impacted by a public health order due to the COVID-19. For us, this effectively halted most of our major construction activities for the past several months with only a limited workforce. Working with Northern Health and Dr. Henry's office, we've enhanced our safety measures and have a robust COVID-19 management plan. We've added additional measures such as at-the-gate testing, vaccinations. All of this is to make sure communities and our workers are safe. The order limiting our workforce has since been lifted, and that means that our workforce numbers are no longer constrained, and we're resuming construction activities this summer. We're now about 45% overall completion on the project to date, and as spring breakup is opening up work areas, we're now in a period of gradual ramp up until August, when we'll be back to our peak of over 4,000 women and men working across the project. We're putting people back to work at a time when they need it most, actually, right now. These are significant opportunities for Northern BC, and already on the project, we've awarded $1.25 billion in Indigenous and local contracting opportunities. And in 2020 alone, we donated nearly $800,000 back to local communities through our community investment and employee giving programs. Opportunities from Coastal GasLink will bring benefits to British Columbia and Canada and can help drive the economic recovery in northern BC. And for us, success is more than just constructing our pipeline. It's about building and preserving our relationships and taking the opportunity to learn from one another. We remain committed to our collaboration with local and Indigenous communities, even if it means we can't get together just yet over a cup of coffee. We've participated in many virtual meetings like this one today because our communities are so crucial to our success. One of the themes you'll hear from our team is legacy, and we are committed to creating a legacy of safety and respect for communities and the environment. This is what we expect from the culture, attitude, and performance of each and every person working on our project. Our goal is to really set a new standard for project delivery that will leave a legacy for British Columbians for decades to come. It means building a project that Canadians can be proud of, with safety at the forefront, global sustainability goals in view, and excellence in engineering and construction right in our own backyard. This is the legacy we want to leave when construction of this project is complete. And I want to thank the Fort St. John Chamber and the Chambers and the Peace for all of the work you do and for hosting this valuable event and providing us the opportunity to appear virtually today. For all of us to improve, for all of us to build new opportunities, we need to share best practices, learn from one another, and be better as an energy industry. And I now have the pleasure to introduce Susannah Pierce, Country Chair and GM, Renewables and Energy Solutions Canada. For Shell Canada, recognized as 2019 most influential women in business in Vancouver Magazine. Ms. Pierce has had several senior positions in the energy and technology sectors in Canada, the US, and in Europe. Most recently as Director of Corporate Affairs for LNG Canada. Susannah is a leader that I've had the opportunity to learn from and look up to as someone who understands meaningful stakeholder and Indigenous relationships. As Canada navigates the energy transition, we are well served with Susannah in a leading role for that conversation. Over to you, Susannah.
Thanks, Kyle. And I'm not Susannah. I apologize. As technology has finally swooped in, Susannah was waiting patiently to begin her presentation and suddenly has been bumped. So we will just put on our pause video for a few moments while we wait for her to reconnect. One moment. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Hello, Susannah, we have you back online. If you could hit your camera, we can proceed with your presentation. Technology. It's great when it works and frustrating when it doesn't. Oh, it bumped again. Our apologies, everybody. We're just trying to get this going. We seem to have a technical difficulty, obviously. So once we get on, she will be live as soon as she connects again.
Last time? Are we good?
There we go. You're live now, Susannah. Sorry for the problems.
No problem. It is technology, and I think we're all kind of used to that. So I apologize for being a few minutes late. I'll get right into it. And again, thank you everybody for maybe I gave you 5 minutes to check your emails, grab a coffee, use the restroom. But Kyle, it's great to have that very great introduction from you about the project, about the pipeline, which indeed is crucial infrastructure to ensure that the gas from this region gets to the plant and then overseas to the markets that truly do need it for their own energy uses as well as for decarbonization, which I'll get into in a moment. I also want to recognize that I'm calling in today from Vancouver, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh people. And I acknowledge also that Shell's natural gas assets at Groundbirch are located near Fort St. John, on Treaty 8 territory, a traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling route for the Cree, Métis, Dene, and Denezal. And with the recent discovery of the remains of 215 Indigenous children at the residential school in Kamloops, I think we all must recognize traditional lands with even deeper meaning, sadness, and at the same time, hope and a commitment to healing, recovery, and a better future together. I was honored to receive the invite to join you for this conference, and I've traveled to the friendly Fort St. John many, many times over the years. I am a fan of the resilience, plain speaking, and let's get it done attitude. I noticed today also that Fort St. John Airport just signed up to be a supporter of Not in My City, which is an organization dedicated to ending human trafficking, which in our country disproportionately impacts Indigenous women and girls. I encourage you to take a look at Not in My City and take their online training course, because in fact, once you do, I think you'll see the community and this issue much, much differently. And finally, let me also give a shout out to the Mayor and Council. I have admired the Mayor and the Council's leadership in sustainable city planning, including their award for LEED Platinum and Certified Passive House designation for the Fort St. John Demonstration House, as well as the city's microhydro project just downstream from the city's wastewater treatment plant. And I also have to say thank you to Cheryl and the Chamber for their resilience, persistence, patience, and professionalism in bringing us together. It is unfortunate that I can't be there with you in person or the rest of you from wherever you may be sitting today, but I hope each of you feel the hope and the optimism for the future, particularly as we look at how the COVID numbers are going in the right direction. Now, as Kyle mentioned, I'm speaking to you in a new capacity as the head of Shell Canada, President Country Chair. And you probably know that Shell has been in Canada for more than 100 years, and we have a long history of development in oil and gas, refining and upgrading, retail distribution, recently now LNG, and increasingly renewable and energy solutions, which is my second hat as GM for Renewables and Energy Solutions. But let me start my remarks today talking about natural gas. Shell, as you may know, plays a significant role in the global gas industry. Gas accounts for around half of our total global production and is key to our corporate strategy to provide more and cleaner energy, which I will get into in more detail. And we remain positive on the outlook for natural gas and LNG. Despite the volatility caused by COVID-19, global LNG trade increased slightly to 360 million tons last year. LNG demonstrated its resilience by providing the flexible energy needed throughout the world during the pandemic. And overall, global LNG demand is still estimated to nearly double, hitting 700 million tons by 2040. Now, as we're increasingly seeing around the world, countries and companies, including Shell, are adapting net zero emissions targets and seeking to create lower carbon energy systems. As the cleanest burning fossil fuel, natural gas and LNG can have a role to play in delivering the energy the world needs today and helping to power towards lower emissions targets. According to estimates, more than half of future LNG demand will come from countries with net zero emissions targets. As an example, China's announcement of a target to become carbon neutral by 2060 is expected to continue driving up its LNG demand to help decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors. Heavy-duty road transport is one of those, with the sector's consumption of LNG almost doubling between 2018 and 2020 to serve the fastest growing fleet of well over 500,000 LNG fueled trucks and buses. And as it relates to renewable power, in fact, it's not about taking away from it, it's in fact about backing it up with gas plants, which indeed, I'm sure you heard from Brian earlier today, are much better than coal as it relates to air emissions and greenhouse gases. So as demand grows, a supply-demand gap is still expected to open in the middle of this decade, with less production coming on stream than previously projected. And this can be promising news for LNG Canada and communities like Fort St. John. And to ensure that the BC natural gas industry has a role to play, we must ensure that it remains cost competitive and that natural gas production continues to meet environmental and social performance standards. And we are on the right path to improve our performance. In the past, we would drill up to 13 wells per development well pad. Today, we only need half as many, 5 to 7, to achieve the same production. This obviously also means reduced cumulative land impacts and less disturbance for our local communities. Also at our Groundbirch asset, we have reduced GHG emissions by about 25% over the past 6 years and kept methane emissions intensity below the Shell target of 0.2%. We pre-build our pipelines so that when we bring on new wells, we can avoid flaring. This also allows us to eliminate emissions that would otherwise be generated through trucking water to complete new wells and for use in our operations. We also invested in Generation 4 electric multi-well pads, which are designed to avoid methane. The first well pad came on stream in 2018, and GHGs have decreased by more than 90%. All future well pads will use this design. This, combined with low carbon power supplies, predisposes LNG from BC to produce LNG with lower GHG emissions. In LNG Canada's case, the project will use 20% renewable power, which means that LNG Canada's Kitimat operation will have lower GHG emissions per ton than any large facility operating anywhere in the world today, as Brian Cox mentioned earlier. So the good thing is, in addition to what we're doing, customers are also increasingly looking to lower carbon LNG. Shell has already delivered 7 carbon neutral cargoes in Asia and just recently an 8th in Europe. So you can see that customers are demanding better environmental performance, and this can be a competitive advantage for BC. And for companies like Shell, this is also crucial because 90% of the GHG emissions we need to address to become net zero come from Scope 3 emissions, the emissions that are generated by our customers. Now, let me spend a brief moment on Shell's Powering Progress strategy that was announced earlier in the year. Under this strategy, Shell will continue to generate shareholder value, power lives, respect nature, and become by 2050 a net zero emissions energy business in step with society. Now, when we say net zero, this means net zero emissions from our operations, both Scope 1 and 2, and as I mentioned earlier, from the end use of the energy projects, our Scope 3 emissions. And as it relates to natural gas, we see growth in natural gas as one of the 6 key levers to help Shell and our customers decarbonize. And we will deliver this through our upstream and transition pillars, which include natural gas production and LNG, which in turn produce the cash flow to support our investments in our growth pillar, which is comprised of things like hydrogen, CCS, biofuels, EV charging, and nature-based systems. And just as our existing assets and infrastructure can fund the energy transition, similarly existing assets and infrastructure can do the same in support of BC's economic recovery and the energy transition required to meet BC and pan-Canadian climate goals. So in closing, if we can maintain a cost-competitive natural gas supply, continue improving environmental and social performance, I believe BC will be a preferred source for LNG, as well as a place for future investment in products and technologies that help us meet our climate goals while delivering the jobs, economic benefits, and government revenues our society needs. Thank you. And now if I can go over to Cailey.
Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. My name is Cailey Murphy, and I am the Vice President of Partnerships and External Relations at the Canadian LNG Alliance. Of course, a big thank you to Cheryl and the Fort St. John Chamber for having me here to moderate this Q&A. To reiterate a common thread today, we do very much appreciate you and your team convening us all together virtually here today. Technical difficulties aside, of course. This afternoon, I am also joining you all from the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people here in Vancouver. And of course, a very big thank you to you, Susannah, for your, of course, always an absolute pleasure to hear you speak about the vast opportunity represented by this sector and the leadership being taken here in Canada and, of course, by Shell. As we know, the opportunities are significant and they are not limited to British Columbia. As referenced a couple times already today, a Conference Board of Canada report released last year indicated that there were more than 95,000 jobs across the country that stand to be generated annually from further developing the LNG sector in British Columbia. With those benefits, of course, flowing straight across the country, as discussed at length on this morning's panel number 1. But we are hosted here today by the Chamber of BC's Energetic City in energetic northeastern British Columbia. And it would be great if you could take a second, Susannah, to talk a little bit more about the trickle-down effect of employment and local economic impact in the Fort St. John area.
Excellent. Thanks, Cailey. And it's great to see and work with you again. Again, a big shout out to Cailey and Brian Cox at the Canadian LNG Alliance. You guys have been doing a really good job of talking about the sector, the industry, and the importance of it. So as it relates to the trickle down, or you could even say trickle up effects of LNG, I mean, I think one of the things that when LNG Canada was moving through its development cycle, we did take a look at is what does it mean across the full value chain? And I'm sure that, Kyle has referenced the number of jobs that are created on the pipeline. Within the LNG plant itself, there's about 4,500 jobs that are created at the plant itself. But then the upstream, you can expect a number of jobs associated with the development of the gas itself. So that's continuing to produce the wells, that's continuing to make sure that they're prepared to flow the gas once the plant is up and running this decade. So again, I think as it relates to jobs during construction, the number of about 10,000 jobs as a result of LNG Canada is all across the full value chain. So it's plant, it's pipeline, and it's the upstream. And I think CAP has also indicated through their own analysis that if we look towards the end of this decade, we're looking at about 12,000 jobs and approximately $5 billion in government revenues across the various levels of government. So really there's significant trickle up effects, and we expect that'll continue as the LNG project continues to go into operation and should there be a second phase.
Thank you. Yes, the opportunities ahead are very exciting, and of course, at an incredibly important time for all of us to have those opportunities at our fingertips. Perhaps now for our chamber audience, perhaps you can speak a bit about how Shell is working to prioritize that impact and contract spend with both local and Indigenous-owned businesses.
Sure, thanks, Cailey. Shell has really been, kind of at the forefront, I think, of looking at something called local content and social performance. And in fact, it's something that I remember when we were developing the LNG Canada project, we had to really talk a little bit about, well, how do we make sure that we're sharing benefits? And so the benefits as it relates to the upstream or the gas production, has been as a result of our Groundbridge asset, which we acquired in 2008. And I know that just over the last 3 years, about 65% of contracting has gone to local Northeast BC businesses. And I believe on the order of approximately $21 million to Indigenous businesses over the last 3 years as well. So you can see there's a prioritization to make sure that we spend locally first. It does mean that we need to make sure that the training and the opportunities are there for local businesses so that if for one reason or another, they're not able to make a contract, that we look for opportunities to work with them to see how we can get them ready for the next one.
That is really great to hear. Shifting gears just a little bit here, I want to talk about our energy transition, which has been an important common thread today. We are seeing, of course, increasingly companies are facing pressure to set more ambitious climate targets and to continue to cut emissions. Where do you see the opportunity to align our interests in both climate action and economic growth?
Yeah, well, I think we have to. I mean, I don't think you can have one without the other. Yeah, because it's not right for people to fear that they won't have a job. But the same token, it's not right for people and our kids to fear that the climate will not be, right for life. So I think we have to continue to look for opportunities to bring the two together. Now, that might mean that we may not do some of the things we do today 20 years from now. If we look at Shell's energy transition as well, we're making significant commitments to invest in the right sorts of products and technologies such that by 2030, 2035, we have actually made quite an inroads in our own transition. So that will mean, as it relates to oil and gas production, for example, that we will stop frontier exploration by 2025. It means that we've already hit peak oil in 2019. Gas will grow, as I mentioned earlier, in proportion to our other production. But I think it's important also to consider, as we look at Fort St. John, how it continues to make sure that it's investing in the right sorts of opportunities and technologies in partnership with businesses and governments. The interesting thing, as I've referenced in my remarks, that I think will also come to bear as it relates to BC, is the existing assets we have today. Just like Shell's existing business in the upstream, actually helps to create the cash flows that we can then generate to invest in new technologies. So like Shell, we can sort of see the same thing in Canada and British Columbia, where our existing assets today can actually deliver the government revenues and corporate revenues to invest in technologies with a lower carbon footprint. Now, we need to be mindful, we need to set a target so that we can keep pace, with the Paris commitments that our governments have made. But I think with the right combination of government and corporate commitments, we can actually get there, working with local people, training institutions, so that people are ready for the jobs as we transition into new technologies and new products.
That is great. I could not agree more. And it's an excellent segue into my next question, which is, we also know that the need to reduce emissions in natural gas production does span the entire value chain. So for the benefit of our chamber community listening today, what would you say that oil and gas service firms should be thinking about regarding their role in this future?
Well, again, I think oil and gas service firms, it's interesting. Shell's just invested in a technology. We're essentially looking at how we can help our suppliers understand their own carbon footprint. We're calling it SEF. And so it's a hub in which our suppliers can actually look to how do we measure our own carbon footprint so we can actually take our own position on how we can decarbonize. So I would encourage folks to take a look at that. And there's lots of other private businesses today that I've seen pop up that are willing to work with local service companies so that they can first understand their own emissions and then begin to plan of how they can actually reduce them. I also think the great thing we have going on right now is we do have the support of governments, both federally and provincially, to incentivize some of these transitions. And so really take a hard look at what those are and how they could apply to you. And then also have conversations with your local authorities, about what you might need, because we need to work together to identify the gaps so that we can close them, so that we can have the sustainable enterprises we need and the jobs.
That is some very good direction, and is a good opportunity to put a fine point on a question that I want to end with, which is on leadership. We find ourselves, of course, in very interesting and unprecedented times. What, in your view, will be required by corporations, governments, citizens alike to achieve these shared goals that we've all heard about today?
Yeah, I probably am not going to be alone in thinking that the time for taking polar positions is done. We are all citizens of this world. We all need to come together and speak respectfully, acknowledging the difference that we have, but then also spending our time in the areas where we can agree. And so I hope that we do that, because I think the world is ripe for fracturing. The world is ripe for us versus them. But when we can come together with shared purpose, shared values, which I believe we have, I think we can find the shared solutions. So that, for me, is leadership. Leadership is being willing to say we need to do things differently and being willing to work together to achieve those things, and crossing the divide between the us versus them and the polarized positions that we've seen so much of.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Susannah. It is really about those shared goals that we are all collectively working towards, I think. And it's been really great to hear about the leadership being taken by industry. So thank you. We are, of course, at a critical juncture. And as Brian mentioned in his earlier keynote, it's going to take a yes and approach for us to all meet our climate goals, create equity across that energy transformation, and accelerate economic recovery here. So it's great to hear about the yes and leadership role that Shell is taking. And thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. I, for one, look forward to carrying the conversation on forward in the panel after the break. But looking at the time here, I'll pass it back over to Cheryl.
Hi. Thank you so much, Susannah and Cailey. That was a great conversation. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning there. I do just want to address one of the comments in our chat box there by Rudy. He's just asking about providing some guidance on local company and how to begin to work with some of the local companies. And he does mention Shell, but tomorrow we're going to be focusing on some of our regional opportunities that are more local and providing some guidance and some information on how you can connect with local companies, connect with Indigenous businesses, connect with Indigenous nations, and hopefully develop your business and grow it through some of those partnerships. So tomorrow we're going to work on that regional, what do we do locally and how do we connect a little bit better? Unless Susannah wants to make a comment about that.
Well, I would just say that as it relates to Fort St. John and Groundbirch, if you do go on to the Shell website, you will see contact information for Groundbirch, and you can start with that if that's a good place for you to check it out.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunities around. People are saying that they're quite busy up here, so that's good news. That's good news for everybody. So I look forward to the panel that we have coming up at 2 o'clock that we'll follow up with. Susannah, you're part of that as well with us. And I'm looking forward to that. So for now, we're going to sign off. I want to say thanks, Cailey, for jumping in and having a conversation with Susannah, and for Susannah for being able to get back in and appreciate it. So we will pop back on when we start our next session. Thanks for joining us.